You're now watching the Vision Channel, where Habakkuk 2 and 2 says, write the vision and make it plain, so they that see it can take it and run with it. This is the channel where faith and vision collide to bring forth a manifestation. You're watching the Vision Channel. I would like to welcome you to our broadcast tonight. Tonight we have a special treat. Tonight is going to be different. I need you to be attentive. I don't need you to be judgmental tonight, because tonight this show is not about my accolades, not what I've done, not what God has expressed to me. But tonight it's going to be about Pastor Celestine Malone. Pastor Malone, Chandrea Malone. Tonight is her night. Tonight we're going to esteem her. Tonight we're going to talk about one of her greatest achievements, that she was able to express herself in such a way that she has written a book. Now, this book here, this book, I call it Fire. This is the book of fire. This is her life written on pages. Most people, they can put their life on page, but they can't change the chapter. They never reach chapters because their life is written out. She has written her life upon pages for testimonies. If people understand that this book is a book of testimonies, testimonies is what you overcame. Please hear this. This book is a book of testimonies. You know, when the Bible said in the book of Revelation how we overcame him, and this book of 5 chapters show how she overcame him. Overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the words of her testimonies. The enemy didn't desire for this book to get out, but it's too late. It's too late. The testimonies are in it. Woo, woo. Listen, you don't get a testimony until you're tested. The first 4 letters of testimony is T-E-S-T. She was tested from her childhood unto her adulthood. And every test that she was in, God was right there through every test. Let me tell you something about tests. Now, I'm getting excited now. Let me tell you something about tests. When you take a test, the teacher is there. You'll never take a test with the absence of the teacher. So it didn't matter what she had to go through. The teacher was still in the room when she was taking the test. There's one thing that I've learned about God, that the Bible said that you can even fail or fall. Watch this. You can fall. And just because you have fallen, because God has created you in his image and his likeness, it said a just man will fall 7 times, but yet he'll get back up. This was the test because the teacher was in the room. And the teacher graded her on the curve. Oh, my God. Listen to what I'm trying to tell you. Tonight, you may be one of you. You may think that you have fallen. You may think that you have failed. You may think that God is not with you. But I'm telling you right now, God is still with you. David said, if I made my bed in hell, then the Lord will be right there with me. So the Lord is right there with you in your circumstance and in your situation. And I'm telling you tonight, you need to get your hands on this book. This book is called From Tragedy to Triumph. Please hear what I'm saying. From tragedy to triumph. You have no idea that some people are experiencing tragedy. See, sometimes God will let some people go first that you can follow them. You can follow the footsteps that God and other people have set that has went before you, so you can follow the footsteps. And I believe that tonight you'll get the liberty to see some of the encounters where the change came from. I'm going to ask us some questions tonight about this book. This book, From Tragedy to Triumph, where the Bible said that God will always cause you to triumph. And when you get this book, listen to me. This book, I told you, is fire. This book is a purifier. It's a fire. This book will challenge you. This book will drive you. You'll be the driving force. So you won't stay where you are, but you'll continue to move and where God needs you to move. Do you know that God's nickname is Go, G-O? His nickname means go. Listen, God will never allow you to stay stuck in the situation because God is the God that moves, and God is telling you that this season is time for you to go. Now, before I even open this book, I want to introduce this author that I'm so proud of, and I'm going to let her introduce herself on this show tonight. I truly believe you have no idea how excited I am of all of her achievements, all of her accomplishments. You know, I've watched her grow into this beautiful tree that now she's producing fruit. This is just one of the fruits from the tree that she produced. Watch, because she matured as a seed. Seeds mature into trees, and once the tree mature, it produces mature fruit. So this is one of the fruit from the seed that she became, and the seed matured until it became a tree, so now she's producing fruit. So I want to introduce her to our listening audience today. What would you say to our listening audience today? And let me ask you a question. What and how? What gave you the idea or thought, a line of thought, to write the book? And here's the thing. Okay, what gave you the thought and the idea to write the book, and why release it now?
Well, good afternoon, good evening, sorry everyone. I'm Pastor Chandrea Malone. As you can see, and I just want to share this really quickly. At the time of writing this book, I was Chandrea Celestine, and God allowed me to go through a transformational process to where I can receive who He truly called me, who He had desired for me to be after making it through this process. Now, the inspiration from this book, the idea came when I was the age of 15, and I was at a church service, and someone came with the man of God and came. You're going to write a book. And at the time, I was still full of innocence, even though I gone through so much at that time. I was still in a purified state, I would say. And he told me I was going to write the book. And I was like, okay. So in my mind, initially, I was like, okay, I got to go home and start writing the book. That was my mentality at that age. And so I ended up going home. I was like, okay, what am I going to call the book, God? Like, what am I going to do? So I'm like, okay, who am I? That's going to be the name of this book. So I'm like, okay, so where do I start? But then I thought, okay, God, I didn't been through some stuff, but I ain't been through some stuff yet. I'm only 15. Like, life haven't really got real for me yet. So I kind of put like a hold on it. And then going through a lot of different things I went through over time, the Lord allowed the man of God to release a word to me. And I'm so descriptive and detailed because when God tells me something, I remember the timing, the place that I was at, what I was doing. So I'm going to be real, real honest. At the time, I was actually like in the Smoothie King line. And I was on the phone with Apostle here. And he just began to prophesy and speak into my life. Now, this is the year 2019, and he was speaking into my life. He was like, okay, you're going to write a book, and this is the name of the book that I hear, and it's going to be about this, and be honest and be transparent in this book. So I was like, okay, God, now hold on. Now, if I be too honest, I don't know how people going to feel about me, because I can be pretty honest. So I took heed to the instruction, and at the time, I felt like, okay, God, this is the perfect time, not understanding that I was going to have to encounter great warfare in order to write this book. But I didn't understand it. I'm just like, okay, same thing as the age of 15. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to write this book and I'm going to get it done. So I started the process, but I never finished at that time. So over time, God allowed me to go through different things. And when I thought that I was done with the situation or with the cycle, it would reoccur and I would backslide. And I would constantly backslide and constantly backslide. And it's like the deeper in God I tried to go, I'm like, okay, God, it's still something in me that's not finished yet. So as I went through this process, God allowed me to see the different things to where I felt like I was finished with that process. He allowed me to say, okay, it's still this here, it's still that here. You still have a little bit of this residue, that residue. And then when he allowed me to release it, I had gotten to a point in my life to where it's like, okay, God, I totally surrender to you. I don't feel like going back. I don't want to go back. I'm tired of going through this cycle. I want to complete this task because I truly understand that once I complete this task, it's going to save somebody's soul because it blessed mine. So God waited until I was completely done. Because a lot of times in our life, we feel as though we're done, but God is like, no, it's still more there. When the enemy comes, he's going to find something there a lot of times. And it's like, okay, you have to be either willing to submit and surrender at that time and say, God, I'm done, or you just have to allow God to constantly purge you and cleanse you, because we can be ready. We can think that we're ready, and God is like, okay, it's just not the time or the season yet. So I feel like at this point in my life, God was like, okay, and he made a way. He literally opened every door and every avenue and gave me favor in order to complete this task.
Maybe I'm not that educated. Could somebody spell ready for me?
READY. Read.
There you go. If I hope that you're ready, but you can only be ready after you read. This book would have you ready to be on fire for God, but it's according to what you have read. What you read or what you read will make you ready for your assignment. Listen, your life, this what you just said just a second ago, you kind of remind me of a cake. I bake cakes, and I've loved baking. And one thing that I've learned about baking is that when people look at the ingredients, it doesn't look like the cake. One thing that I've learned about testimonies, you can't use somebody else's. Woo. So God have to give you your own ingredients. And I believe that what you were saying, that God was giving you your own ingredients. Your cake is not like everybody else's cake. Your story is not like everybody else's story. So God is giving you the ingredients. And when he gave you the ingredients, most people didn't think that you would come out like a cake. They didn't think because you have to have flour. You got to have sugar. See, some people, when it's homemade, you got to have shortening. You got to have butter. Oh, yeah. You got to have eggs. This ain't no box cake because the box cake has somebody else's name on it. God was giving you your ingredients so you can become your own cake. When people saw your ingredients, they didn't know that God was making you a cake. And not understanding that you were being shaped, you was being molded, because there's no batter that can be made without something being poured into it and being molded. God was molding you. And here's the thing, when you said there was more of you, oh, there was just so much more that God had to get out of me. It's just like a mixer. When the mixer is beating, it has to beat all the ingredients together until things become smooth. And I see your life now. Your life has taken a turn, and your life has turned out to be smooth. Listen, when people were laughing when you were being beat, they didn't know that God was mixing the ingredients. Woo. They thought it was over for you. They thought it was over because they didn't know that one of the things that's inside of a cake that's more important than anything, it ain't the butter. It ain't the sugar. It ain't the vanilla. It ain't the abstract. It's none of this. It's not, the most important thing about a cake is the yolk. Most people didn't see with your ingredients that God was yoking you up with him. Woo-hoo. In the midst of your, oh, I'm getting excited. Woo. In the midst of you are being yoked up. I'm going to read the back of the book first, y'all. I'm going to read the back of the book. Before I get into this book, I'm going to read the back of it. I'm going to ask her some more questions because I'm just getting excited and holding this book in my hand. Let's watch this. You said in 2019, when you was 15, somebody gave you a word that you would write a book. But in 2019, God gave you instructions on writing the book. Watch this. So you know what this book is to me? This book is God's words being fulfilled. My word cannot come back to me void, but it must accomplish where it was sent. So it told me, and it tells me this today, that this book that's in my hand, this is a prophecy that is fulfilled. And God watched over your life until the word came to pass. And tonight we are seeing it in manifestation of this word coming to pass tonight, because the finishing product now is whole. It's been y'all. Listen, please, I'm excited. I told you I'm excited. I'm excited tonight. I'm excited. I'm excited for a finished product. She reminds me of when Christ said, "It is finished." Hey, woo! It is finished. Please, Lord, have mercy. It is finished. The pain that you had to endure, it is finished. Oh my God. Oh my God. Woo. Oh, I got excited. Woo. I almost want to I almost want to take off running. I'm scared of my suit though. I want you to listen to just the back of the book before we get in it. Just the words on the back. Watch this. It said, "Within these pages lies a light that has long remained concealed, shrouded by falsehood and tumultuous circumstances, steaming from an unknown destiny. In my quest to discover myself, I embarked on a journey, unaware that the missing and the salts with alerts, if a celestial alert had been issued for my soul, Let this testimony illuminate not only God's unwavering love, but also his constant persistence, presence in your life. Without his guidance, my life's narrative would cease to exist. Triumph serves as a beacon of hope, a testimony of God's boundless affection amidst the clutches of adversity. Remembering his presence, persevered, and unwavering companion. As you traverse this narrative, discard the weight of your past, for Satan may deploy individuals to dredge up former regrets. Instead, fix your gaze on the path that God has carved out for you. The distance you've journeyed, with your faith as a driving force. Triumph is imminent. Embrace the tenacity within you, for faith without action is incomplete. Whew. Woo! Y'all listen to me. This book, now she has 5 chapters in this book. She have the introduction, rejection. She have chapter 2 is temptation, curiosity. She have 3, chapter 3 is tragedy, deception. Chapter 4, imposter, angel of light. Chapter 5, truth, my reality. And chapter 6, triumphant. Y'all please listen to me. I know I want you to hear this. Please hear me. Now I'm going to give you some nuggets in this book. I wish that I can go through all the details of this book, but in this book, she makes a statement. She said, "I am Chandrea Celestine." Now she's Malone. Now she told you the testimony from writing the book. She said, "I am a mother." Ooh, this messing with me now. "I am a daughter. I am a wife. I am a friend. I am a leader. I am loved and empowered." Watch this. She wrote the book before she got married. Please hear this. And her declaration to herself, she made the statement, "I am a wife." So before she ever became, or somebody said, "I do," or "I desire to marry you," she had already defined what she was before she wrote the book. And watch it. And there's another prophecy that's fulfilled by it being in the book. Lord have mercy. Now, you wrote this book, and you said something in this book, and it startled me. I mean, that revelation came. And I said, "Oh my God!" I couldn't believe when I heard it. The revelation that came behind it. It said, "We serve a God who considers our scars and makes no mistakes. We are His perfect imperfections." What? Could you please elaborate a little bit more on that? We serve a God who considers our scars and makes no mistakes. We are His perfect imperfection.
Well, the Bible states that we don't serve a high priest that's not touched by our infirmities.
Wow.
So in learning that, like as a child, because as a child I was always curious to find out anything that I could possibly find out. And one thing that I would constantly run into is the fact that nobody could ever give me the answer to what I was looking for.
Wow.
So that was one of the ways where, and I know I'm probably getting ahead, but that was one of the reasons why I felt so rejected, because I felt like nobody couldn't help me. I had no type of answer, no type of guidance when I needed it.
Wow.
But in doing that, I learned God in a different way. So when you're young, you raised as, okay, God loves you, no matter what. He's a good guy. He's a faithful God. And we say that, but we really don't understand God and know Him by His actions or by actually what He does, because we just know Him from like our parents, or we know Him from our grandparents. So you just know Him like in a religious way. Let's just be completely honest. That's how you know Him. So with saying that, I learned Him in an intimate way. I learned that when I went through something, if nobody else was there, He was there for me. He made it known, like, I'm here, I'm present. So I would be in drastic times of like major hurt, major pain, not feeling like, okay, I'm gonna make it to the next day. I'm literally praying and I'm crying out. And we're also taught like, okay, if you sin, God is gonna turn His back on you. He's gonna walk away from you and He's done with you. So I learned that he was always a present help in a time of trouble. So you would hear me on different broadcasts always reiterate that scripture because I truly understand it. He's always there. So I found out that every time I had a bruise, every time I had a scar, that he was there to patch it up, that he was there to heal me. And even in my strive to be perfect, because I was so big on like, I'm going to be perfect, I'm going to be perfect. And in me being imperfect, I learned that God is a God that can make you, he can perfect all your imperfections.
Wow.
So it doesn't matter what you, and my heart always goes out to the sinner or the person that the Gentile or the person that, is the reject or however you want to put it. My heart goes out because I've been in that place. I truly can say it. God has allowed me to experience both sides of the spectrum. So I know how it feels to be, praised and people love you because you're doing right. But I also know how it feels for people to like put you up on a pedestal and then knock you down as soon as you do something wrong. Wow. So I got to know God in a different way. And in me finding that out, that made me love him even the more, to where I got to the point to where no matter what I went through, I was like, I know God got my back. God gonna ride for me. If nobody's gonna be there, if my mother's not gonna be there, my father, my siblings, if nobody's gonna be there, I know who I can run to, and I know that he's gonna clean me up, that he gonna put the band-aid on it, that he gonna put the antibiotic that I need. He's gonna heal me. He's gonna do everything that he needs to do. He's always gonna accept me back if I just stay in that place of, okay, God, I'm sincere, I'm repentant, and I really do. I want you to help me right now. So I learned him in a different way.
One thing that I've learned, that you talked about the scars, the hurt, the pain. This reminds me, and I'll use it and I'll phrase it this way. It reminds me, because you never said a scab, you said a scar. It reminds me of Jesus and Thomas. See, testimonies are from scars. People are healed from your scars. So the only way that Thomas would believe, he said, I will not believe unless I stick my finger into the nail prints of his hands. I won't believe until I thrust my hand into his side. And Jesus left the scars to get other people to believe. The scars was a sign that you were healed. But your scars represented the testimony. See, scars to me are revelations that you walked through the valley and made it through. Woo. Woo. It's the scar that Jesus would be sacrificed on the cross. Watch this. And went to perfection but kept the scars. The scars was a sign that he was healed from it, but it was a sign of a testimony. And he had an unbelieving believer to believe based on his scar. Stick your fingers until, if this is going to cause you to believe, then I'll keep the scars. Touch the scars. And many people don't know that some of the stuff that you had to endure, like in the book of Isaiah, he was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities, and the chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes you're already healed. And many people don't know what you had to endure and what you had to go through. Now that you wrote the book, now people can see you was wounded for their transgressions, bruised for their iniquities, and your chastisement of their peace was upon you. They didn't understand. So now they can go back and look in the pages of it. Now they can go back and see that even with my imperfections, that he can still perfect my imperfections, and he'll see me as perfect when other people see my imperfections. It blessed me when I saw we serve a God who considers our scars and makes no mistakes. He allows us to be wounded. She was scarred. My God, today.
Just to add on to that, because again, sometimes we feel as though we've done so much wrong that God cannot, like, he's not going to forgive us. But if you get to a place and it's like, okay, God, I really do repent for this, like I really do ask for forgiveness, God will literally turn back to you and say, okay, I accept you back. So people can remember your faults, they can remember your wrongs, but God will literally throw them away and say, I forgot about it. And still look at you as your initial, look at you what he intentionally created you to be. And that's something that I didn't understand till later on. So it wasn't until later on that I was able to say, okay, God, I can actually put these things on the pages and I can actually write about this stuff because you truly have allowed me to overcome, because I can see you I can see me how you now see me. And that's what I struggled with initially. That's why it took so long.
You also said something in the same page. You said but he has already made a way for you even in sin. Watch this. For every enemy, there is an expiration date. Even Satan left Jesus for a season. Can you explain that expiration date?
So whenever you stated earlier about God giving us tests, God tests us in order to build our testimonies. Well, you know, in order to get a testimony, it can't last always. So people will literally come in your season. God will allow things to happen. It's just like with the situation with Job. God allowed things to happen for so long. That wasn't his end. That was only the beginning of his end. So even how God viewed him initially, he said, okay, you're an upright man, you're sure evil. This is who you are. This is who I know you to be. So I'm going to allow the enemy access to your life. And I didn't understand the allowing. So God will only allow the enemy to do so much. And then once that's done, once God sees that you've reached that place or you have become who he has desired for you to become, then he'll say, okay, now we'll do away with it. Because God can shut down whatever he desires to shut down. He don't need no permission. Like if God wanted to stop something and cease it, he can. But he waits on us to be built, to build and to trust in him and to believe in him in a different way. And says, okay, now I'm going to cut it out. But with those enemies, just like the enemy, he knows his time is short. He can only do so much. And as believers, I think that's one of the biggest things that we tend to forget, that the enemy can only do so much. He has to still ask our God in heaven permission. But it's only to build our testimony so that other people can overcome and that they can get through once you've reached the point that you're supposed to reach. So in saying that, it's just like I've learned that throughout the course of my life, because those same individuals that I had encountered, they're not here with me. They're in various places. Some of them didn't make it, but that's a different story. But that's just being completely honest. It was time's up. God said, okay, that's the end to it. I'm not about to allow you to get stuck in something when I've called you to come out of something or to make it through it.
Wow. You know, I think of expiration date. You know how milk, it expires. They tell you to drink this before this date. How you buy potato chips. And I've learned that some potato chips, if people don't give a good eye on it, some people can buy something that has already expired. Watch this. And when you open the bag, it looks fresh, but they taste stale. Some people in your life has an expiration date, and they have expired. They are stale. They are no good, just like the milk. Whatever sits, it goes bad. Listen to what I'm trying to tell you. There's an expiration date, and God has given the enemy an expiration date in your life. That means when the expiration date is something goes bad, you throw it out. God is going to throw out the enemy in your life because he has an expiration date. You better get this book. I'm telling you, this is a good book. Hear me? An expiration date. You need to be rejoicing tonight because the enemy has an expiration date. He cannot stay. God is going to kick him out. Just as he kicked him out of heaven, he's going to kick him out of your life because he has an expiration date. Please hear me. This book here, you need to get this book. Please hear me. This right here, please hear me. You have to be strong to read this. You got to see, this book is not rated G. It's rated, listen, it's rated G, but it's rated R, and you're going to have to be MA, mature. It's rated G because it came through God. It's rated R because it stands in the place of righteousness. Now it's rated MA because you have to be mature in order to read the book. Now you said something in on page 9. You said something that captivated my attention, and I wanted to know what your thought processes were. You said, I've learned about cycles during this period because when a demon leaves a person and returns to find them empty and swept, it brings 7 more demons with it. That's why it's critical that when God delivers you from something, you must fill the empty spaces with him and allow the Holy Spirit to dwell in you. You said that it blessed me. You said you learned about the cycles. So there are cycles that people go through. Explain that. What are these cycles and how can people break the cycles as you broke your cycle?
When it came down to Got to make sure it's on. When it came down to me going through different situations and different circumstances, you know how you have people that say I went through something, it was a different face, but the same situation but a different face.
Mm.
So over time, I learned like I kept on running into the same thing. So I'm like, after a while, it's like, okay, I just went through this with Johnny. I just went through this with Tim. Now I'm going through it with Matthew. So what am I doing or what am I not catching that I'm supposed to be catching?
Mm.
So one of the things when it comes to my life, God used me a lot and spoke to me through relationships. That's how he dealt with me, whether it was a family relationship, whether it was a love relationship, however you want to put it. He always dealt with me in relationship. That was a form of communication. So that's why my life is built like on relationships. So basically, I would go through these different things and I started to see patterns. So I'm like, okay, so instead of me trying to break the pattern initially, I would go through these different things and I say, okay, I'm going to do something different. So if I see Matthew coming at me this way, I'm not going to respond how I respond to Johnny, as opposed to saying, okay, I'm about to nip this in the bud because I keep on seeing the same person with a different face. I tried to change my mentality to say, okay, in that moment in time when I feel a certain type of way, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to do that differently. But I kept on getting the same results. So I was functioning from a place of insanity. I was trying to do something different in the same situation, but getting the same result.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, God, like, what do I have to do? And I kept on running into this brick wall. So I would have a desire to change. I would have a desire to do something different. But it's like, okay, God, I keep on getting the same thing. So what do I need to do? But it was my lack of surrenderance. Because what I thought was good for me, God said that's not good for you. It's not good that you function like this. It's not good that your mentality like this. It's time to break it. But because I had done it so long, it was hard for me to submit. And this might be going somewhere else, but I'm just going to release whatever, is in my spirit right now. But it was hard for me to submit because I had no true authority. Like, I had no true guidance as a child.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, God, you're introducing myself through these circumstances and these situations. But since I don't know what true authority is, how do I submit to you? How do I give me to you when the only way I know how to give myself to an individual is to physically give myself to them?
Wow.
So if I can't physically give myself, how do I know I'm really giving myself to you? How do I know I'm really being pleasing with you if I'm not doing it in the way that I'm used to doing it?
Wow.
And I think that's why a lot of times I went through this. So what I had to learn was, because the Bible tells us once a demon leaves, it goes back to get seven the more. So if it finds the house swept and garnished, it's going to allow more things to come in because it's empty. It's a vacancy. So I was like, okay, God, what do I need to do? I need something in this place that's going to help me to move forward. And when I learned, okay, I need to pray more. I need to fast more. And it was really, to be completely honest, it was a lifestyle of fasting that got me through a lot of the situations that I had been through.
Wow.
Now, prior to, of course, when you're young, you're going through this. When you lack understanding, you don't really know. So it's really hard to function from that place of understanding when you don't have it. But when God allowed me to come into him and to know him, I was like, okay, I have to do something different. So I found the more that I submitted and surrendered to him, and that's just basically doing something. It's changing your mind. Wow. It's saying, okay, God, I'm used to functioning like this. I'm used to acting like this. I'm used to doing this. I'm used to having sex when, I feel lonely, or when my heart is broken, or I feel like smoking weed when I feel like my heart is broken, or I feel like drinking when I feel like my heart is broken. So now I need to learn how to take all that in and say, okay, God, I need to release this to you.
Wow.
So I found the more the more I started reiterating the word of God over my life, the more I started to try to picture me as he seen me. Then I strayed away from the old man and I turned into who he had desired for me to be. But it took me to change my mindset and change my view on my own life in order for me to do what he needed me to do. So going through cycles of life is literally just based in a pattern. A lot of times we see it, but we avoid it. Wow. Because it's like, okay, God, it still feels good to me, or, it still appeases me in this way, but it's the same person. And you start to think, well, maybe it's the person. Maybe it's not me. Maybe I'm looking at the individual and maybe they just struggling with what they struggling with, and maybe God want me to change that person. And God is saying, no, this is something that's attached itself to your life, and you're going to constantly keep on going through this until you submit and surrender your ways to me and allow me to fix something in you that's been broken all along.
Wow. When I hear the word cycle, I think about women. When I hear the word cycle, but one thing that I've learned since I've had children, what breaks something that has been constant, a cycle, is pregnancy. Whew. Intimacy stops cycles from coming. And what I've learned and what I've just heard you say, that you broke the cycle of familiarity by spirits, these familiar spirits that just showed up with different faces in different places, that you broke the cycle with intimacy. So the demons that you were just expressing, they said they would go back to get 7 more. But when they came back, they had already saw you was pregnant with Christ. They had already saw your transformation. They had already saw your change. They had already saw you being transformed. So you didn't have any other supplement. You had the real thing. Like they say, Coke ain't nothing like the real thing. Coke was the real thing, and Christ is the real thing. So that broke the cycle, because in cycles you lose life. If Bible, I can't. I'm going too far. Yeah, if the Bible said that in the blood is life, you lose life doing cycles, and you broke the cycle because you received the seed of Christ, and now you became pregnant through intimacy. Whew. I tell you, this book here is something. Now, in verse 14, you said something. This is because of the forming of a physical soul tie, which is when souls become entangled on different levels, whether conversational, sexually, emotionally, financially, socially, spiritually, visually, or mentally. My God. Now, you talked about this now. And I know some people sometimes they may not understand soul ties, but the understanding and the revelation you have, and this, you didn't just say sexually, you said emotionally, you used financially, socially, spiritually, visually, conversationally, and mentally. Could you please elaborate and explain to us? You have a plethora of revelation on what a soul tie is. People just think soul ties come through intimacy. But explain all of these other areas to where you can develop a soul tie through emotionally or conversationally.
Well, it's like this. It's just like when you talk to somebody naturally and you start to see all the stuff that they struggle and battle with, and if you're not covered, if you're not guarded, then you'll start to become that person. So like, okay, I'm gonna be completely transparent. I can't help but be honest. So like, if I'm talking to someone and you say a word and that word pops out to me, I'm gonna come back and say the same word that you just said.
Wow.
So like, you just said wow, and I'll be like, okay, after you're done, I'll be like, oh wow, and I'm like, oh, I just said what you just said. It's that easy. It's like contracting something that's in the atmosphere and you just pick it up. And if you're not guarded, because spirits and these things are, the spiritual realm is so much realer than what we naturally can see. And people really don't understand that.
Wow.
Because you can become someone or you can become something by an encounter.
Wow.
So visually, I can see you and it's like, okay, I see you, and I'll go home thinking about you. I don't even know you. It could be like 10 hours throughout the course of the day. I think about that same person again because it was something about that individual's life that captivated me.
Wow.
When it came to emotional soul ties, I started to form because of a lack of what I did not have. I will form emotional soul ties with people. So, okay, if I'm lonely right now and you come talking to me, we've already merged, especially when you're telling me something that's going to appease and feed my spirit.
Wow.
So it's like you're telling me, okay, you're beautiful. Or you're telling me like, oh my gosh, you smell so good, or you're so smart. But I've never heard before that I'm smart. I never heard before that I'm beautiful. I always look down on myself. So you start to feed my spirit. So whatever nurtures or feeds you, that's what you're going to take a liking to. So I found when it came to like, because before I ever did anything sexually or intimately, I formed a whole bunch of soul ties emotionally because of rejection, because of what I did not have.
Wow.
And because I did not understand this when I was a child, because I had no guidance, I felt like it was okay. So I would take on other people's burdens. I would take on other people's mannerism. If I would see an individual sad or lonely or depressed, I would go under that individual and me and that individual merge. So now that individual feels a little bit better, but I didn't took home their burden because I don't understand who God has called me to be at this time. So when it comes to emotional stuff, people just think, oh, it's innocent. I don't know. It starts here first. Before I ever do something physically, it's going to hit my mind. I'm going to imagine it. And if I can imagine it, then we can go from there. And you will literally start to function like an individual. You will start to act like them. You'll start to think the way that they think. Whatever they say, you'll start to say. And then that person will become your God and you not even know it. And that's what I ended up. It's that easy. Like, it's literally that easy. You can just engage in a conversation with someone and you become that person if you're not guarded. If you can't discern what they're dealing with, if they can't discern what they're dealing with, then you take on that person. So you become that person. So you can just have one conversation in the store with somebody, walk away, go to the next person, but you didn't form the soul tie with that individual because y'all have something in common or something that y'all like the same. So no matter where you go, that person is still attached to you.
Kindred spirits.
And I learned it the hard way because I had nobody there to say, this is what's going on with you. So I would spiral out of control. I react a certain type of way, not understanding. I just encountered somebody that was dealing with suicide. I just encountered somebody that was dealing with the spirit of murder, but I don't know this because I'm just a child.
Wow.
Even when it came down to adults with aggression, because I always was a personable child. So I would get into a lot of debates with older people because I felt like, okay, what you're doing is not right. What God is telling me is right. What you saying is not right, because you know right is right and what's wrong is wrong.
Right.
And that's just how at the time that's just how it was. So a lot of people be like, okay, you're wise beyond your years, you're this and you're that. And I didn't understand nothing that was going on, but I was taking on different stuff from individuals and watching the lives of different people and becoming those people.
Wow.
So then that put me in a place of identity crisis, because then I didn't know who I was.
Wow. So spirits have the ability to transfer. And many people, and I'll just give people a natural example of what you were saying. You know, in my generation, one of the greatest basketball players was Michael Jordan. So you see people today are still wearing his shoes, trying to jump like him, look like him, wag their tongue like him. Everybody is trying to be Jordan. If I can be like Mike, so everybody. So now it's not the Michael Jordan era, it's the LeBron James era. So people are taking on the personality, trying to walk like him, they trying to talk like him, you know. And it's that easy to take on the personality. They think it's the personality, but it's really the spirit of a person that you're taking after. You try to talk like him, get your hair cut like him, you try to play like him. So you imitate and emulate all of his moves, not realizing that you have a connection and a soul tied to the person, because you're going to go buy his shoes, you're going to go buy his jersey, you're going to go to the games, you're going to do everything to emulate that person and not realize that you're not playing. You will never be the person, but you just connected to the person through a soul tie. Wow. Also, you said through communication. You know, the Bible said evil communication, it corrupts good manners. So because a person has learned how to communicate with an individual just by them talking to you, and like you said, just because I said wow, and then all of a sudden you come back and said wow, but all of a sudden something was transferred, so my words became your words. Wow, that is incredible. Wow. 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 And I got to get checked. I wish I could read every page. But on page 22, you said something. You used a statement. You said you can never move forward if you constantly look back. You can never move forward unless you constantly look back. I know there's some people that desire to go back because it may be a time of loneliness, or maybe they feel the absence of companionship. When you wrote this, what state of mind were you in, and what were you looking back to that you needed to look forward to go to?
At the time, I was looking back to what was familiar,
Mm.
and I had a fear of becoming something that I never knew.
Wow.
So when it came down to God telling me, because a lot of times God will tell you who you are to bring you from where you are.
Wow.
So God was telling me, okay, you're going to be this, you're going to do that, but in order to become this, you have to let go of everything that you once knew.
Wow.
So it's like the story of Abraham. In order for Abraham to become the father of faith, he had to move in faith.
Wow.
And I didn't understand that at the time. So as I'm writing this, I'm like, okay, God, you want me to become this individual. This is who you're saying that I am. You saying that I'm not a garden tool. You're saying that I'm a housewife. You're saying that this is who you're calling me to be. You're calling me a woman of God. You're saying that I'm not, who I used to be, or people knew me to be. You're saying greater things about me that I cannot see in myself. So he showed me like a rearview mirror.
Wow.
And I was actually driving, not writing it, but he gave me this analogy like in driving. So as I'm driving, he's like, look in the rearview mirror. So I look in the rearview mirror and I'm like, okay, but if I'm looking in the rearview mirror, I can't see what's in front of me. So calamity can come, a wreck can happen, everything can happen because I'm so focused on what's behind me, I can't see what's to come. And what's to come is before me.
Wow.
So I kept on looking behind me, and it's hard to focus when you're looking behind you.
Wow.
And he let me know, basically, if you try to look back and drive, you're not going to go nowhere. It'll cause a wreck, it'll cause an accident, and you'll be stuck in the same place.
Wow.
It'll cause you to go back. So as I'm going through this, I'm like, okay, God, my spirit desires, I desire to move forward. But these strongholds, these bonds that I built, is hard for me.
Wow.
How do I get past this?
Wow.
And I can only do it by Him. It was no other way but God. Like literally, I cannot give credit to any person, anything. It was nobody but God.
Wow.
And God will literally set you up to set you up. And He set me up multiple times in order to set me up and catapult me to where He had desired for me to be. But in doing so, I had to be willing to give up everything that I knew, everything that made my flesh feel good. It more so became about my spirit. So when your spirit is dying, you probably can't, or you're probably not aware of it initially, because it seems like your flesh, you just feel so good. But after a while, when it came to my life, God would allow me to feel my spirit dying.
Wow.
So if I feel like I was drifting away or I was going further away than what I had ever knew, it was like, okay, God, what do I do to get back in the place of getting to where I need to be? Because I'd rather for my spirit to live and my flesh to die as opposed to the other way around. Because I want to get to where you have to where you desire for me to be. So you know the saying, you got to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Wow.
I didn't want to go back anymore because there was nothing back there for me. And when God gives you understanding about a situation or a circumstance or a struggle that you may have, it make you snap out of it. Like, this is the reality of the situation. Are you willing to really lose everything that I have for you in order to go back to something that's only going to make you feel good for a second, or it's only going to make you become for a minute, and then and the crazy thing is, a lot of times when you go backwards, when you backslide, you know it's going to happen.
Wow.
It's the same thing. It's not going to be nothing different. So okay, if I'm in this moment of heat, or if I'm in this moment of passion, or if I'm, feeling angry, yeah, I can go beat somebody up, but it's only going to be for a snap moment, and I'm going to get in trouble. It's going to be the same thing, and I'm going to get pushed further back.
Wow.
Same thing with dealing with somebody intimately or sexually. It's the same thing. You can go sleep with that person right now. It'll be good for a second, but the reality is you still have to get back up, and you have to face reality again.
Wow.
And you're still going to put yourself in a greater circumstance or a greater situation than you were before. So when God started allowing me to see this stuff, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's time for me to do something different, because I'm tired of going through the same thing. I want to see what's before me as opposed to what's behind me, because I already know what's behind me.
Wow. You said God gave you the revelation of a rearview mirror, and He showed you to look back. One thing, and this is the difference in the rearview mirror and the windshield. Even though the rearview mirror is small, the past, and I'm talking to somebody today, that you keep looking back, because what you look back to, it was a fetish to your flesh. So your flesh desired the past thing, but it was the past thing for a reason. It's your past. And it is small compared to the windshield. The rear view is connected to the windshield, but the rear view mirror is small compared to how great the windshield is. And God is telling you it's time for you to look forward. It's time for you to move forward. It's time for you to go forward. Because this book right here, it gives you the ability to look at all the mistakes. Please hear me. This one thing I love about God, because it said we are the clay and He's the potter. So when the clay is moving, God spins it. He puts it on the potter's wheel, and whatever clay doesn't fit the mold, that clay comes off. That clay is the sin that's in your life. And God is saying, you don't need this in this season. You don't need that drink in this season. You don't need that weed in this season. You don't need that woman in this season. You don't need that man in this season. You don't need that in this season. He's taking it off. Listen, He's leaving it behind. He's reshaping you, and He's remolding you, because you don't need your past, because God holds your future. Listen, when the Bible said that God is the author and finisher of your faith, watch this. If that person is not with you in this season, it means God didn't pencil him in. He's not a part of your life. He's not a part of this season. He was a part, or she was a part of the last season. He is the author and finisher. He finished that season, and you're going into a new season. My God. In verse 23, you said something. I almost threw this book. It said, you see, we often confuse the beauty of isolation with one or two things, rejection or interrogation. Can you please explain? Lord, we often confuse the beauty of isolation, with one or two things, rejection or interrogation. My God.
In those moments, when God expresses His love to you in a different way, if you never knew his love or truly understood the love of God, you'll look at it like you're being rejected, or you'll look like somebody's interrogating you. You'll look like you'll feel like your life is under a magnifying glass, and you become a spectrum as opposed to who God desires for you to be. So it was some moments and it was some times in my life, and I'm gonna tell you, I explain it to people whenever I talk about it. God literally would set me up and keep me in the house. He would keep me in a place of isolation.
Wow.
Mind you, I did not have the proper guidance as a child. Spiritually, I had no real guidance. So God would show me different things. I hear different things. I see different things. But it's like I had nobody to actually cultivate me or nurture me in these areas to tell me this is what this is, this is what that is. So God literally took me under his wing and said, okay, I'm going to take care of you. Just trust me as a child. So I'm like, okay. So I felt like God was putting me in the house, and I'm looking out the window and I see all the kids playing outside. And I'm like, okay, God, just let me go outside. I want to go outside too. And every time that I would want to go, he would keep me away from it. And I never understood it. So when people would shut me out or not include me in different things because I didn't understand who I was to God, I felt like nobody cared about me. I felt no love. I felt like people was making fun of me, like I was in a room standing in the middle of the room and everybody around talking about me. And this is how the enemy plays with people's minds, because he'll make you feel like that sacred place of isolation is a place to where God has abandoned you. And that's not the case. Even though God is quiet, he's still present. And in his quietness, he's still speaking. And we don't understand it. You look at it like, okay, you have to think about it like this. If God allows you to constantly make it, if God allows you to constantly make it to another day, if God still speaks to you, if he still does things for you, why would he put you in a place of abandonment? Why would he shut you out? He's still God. He's still the same God yesterday, today, and forevermore. He's going to always be the same God. He doesn't change. But in those moments, Satan comes and says, okay, nobody cares about you. You're a loser. Nobody likes you. You're not special to God. God don't love you. You by yourself. Where's God at? And God will allow Satan to speak. He will. He'll just sit there. Keep on talking. Keep on talking. Keep on. And if you don't understand, you'll really start to believe this, and it will take you out of that place of isolation and put you in a place to where it's a whole bunch of people around or a whole bunch of stuff going on, and you'll end up doing stuff before time. So this is how a lot of those cycles was built as well, because I felt like God wasn't hearing my prayers. He wasn't hearing my heart. He wasn't there present with me, but all along he was. He just wanted to see what I was going to do. This is why it's important for us to submit and surrender our ways to God so that God can order our footsteps and direct our paths. I'm not saying something that just sounds good. I'm not saying something because I'm just sitting here looking like this. I'm telling you what I've actually gone through. The enemy knows, like, he's truly crafty. And if you don't catch him, he going to steal from you. And he going to keep on stealing from you. He going to steal time. He going to steal seasons because you believe the deception. This is how man failed in the beginning.
Wow.
If you knew better, you would do better. It's all about what you know. And if God will allow you to know and understand something, to come out of something, you have to function from that place. Because if you don't, the enemy will defeat you every time. So when I was in these moments and when I got to the point where I was like, okay, God, you doing this for a reason. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for keeping me from that. Thank you, Heavenly Father, that you didn't allow this to happen to me. Thank you, Heavenly Father, that you didn't allow me to become an exotic dancer or a stripper. You allowed my homegirl, she went through that, or she went through that situation, but you didn't allow me to get stuck in that. I asked God one time, I said, God, why didn't you allow me to do all this stuff? He said, because I didn't want you to get stuck.
Wow.
I was walking up the stairs going into my apartment. I said, well, thank you, Heavenly Father. Now, granted, I've gone through a lot, but the stuff that would have took me out, he didn't allow me to go through it.
Wow.
That wasn't my testimony.
Wow.
He said, okay, you going to go down this path. You're going to probably do this. You're going to probably do this, but I set a path for you. But he didn't allow me to go to the deep end and get stuck in that place. He always made a way of escape for me. And I truly can say I thank God for that.
Wow. You use the word rejection, and I've learned this personally. It's a part of my own testimony when you use the word rejection. Rejection, I've learned, is God's way of protection. He protects you when other people reject you because he don't want other people to contaminate you. And oftentimes we don't like the rejection part because we don't know that rejection is God's selection, that I'm protecting you. That when he isolates you, he only desires to elevate you. And we're being elevated through isolation, and he has protection through rejection, and we don't know. I had to learn this on my own, just as you did. That rejection part, boy, I tell you, boy, you painted it like a Picasso. She painted it like a Picasso. Listen, please hear what I'm telling you. This book here, From Tragedy to Triumph, you need to get this book. If you read it, it'll probably break your heart. This book here, let me tell you what success is. I got excited now. Let me tell you what success is. Success is not the accumulation of what we think it is. See, we accumulate cars, houses, money, savings accounts, jewelry. So we think these are forms of success. Well, you got the nice job. That's not success at all. We think that is success. Her entire life validates what success is. I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you what success is. You know how some people can have breast cancer and they have to have a mastectomy, and they call them breast cancer survivors. Watch this. Success is not you surviving. Success is you living. They survived the cancer, but they live on. Woo! Woo! Her success came through her story, through her tragedy, through things that she had to overcome. So her success is not her surviving. Her success is now her thriving. She went from being, because she considered herself to be nobody, but now she is a pastor. You know, when God said, I give you pastors after my own heart, then God was showing us very from the beginning that it didn't matter what took place in her life, that she is now thriving because she's living. She's no longer surviving. She should be wearing a pin that she survived life. Woo, hey, woo. She survived tragedy. She survived trials. She survived it. As they have a breast cancer awareness month, this is the month for your awareness. God is aware of your circumstance. He's aware of your situation, and you're not just going to be one that survives it. You're going to thrive through it. You're going to live a different type of life. Now I'm going to read something out, and then this is in verse 35. It says, sometimes in life we go through difficult periods where we feel inadequate, that leads to a craving for validation from others. She said, particularly men. Now, you use the word crave. I, I, now, I don't, know about some people, but I just want to show you revelation just with the word crave. See, you don't crave something until you had it. Ooh-wee. In other words, if your mother cooked chicken and the chicken is good, you don't have to be nowhere around that chicken at all. But just you get a thought, and all of a sudden the craze will come, watch, and your body will call for something that you had that now is a desire that you're now craving. I got to have some chicken. I got to have some sweet potato pie. I got to have some greens. I got to have some cabbage. I got to have some chicken fettuccine. I got to have some gumbo. It's something that you crave. It's something that you've had that's now calling. Your body will call that thing that it remembers. Woo! It will call what it remembers. A crave is something that the body remembers. Now, when you said this was good. Sometimes in life we go through difficult periods where we feel inadequate. That leads to craving for validation. Can you explain just a little bit about that crave? Oh, that crave. Oh, crave. Mashed potatoes and gravy. It's craving.
Lord have mercy. At that particular time in my life, I had a taste of, what it felt like to be somebody, or to be somebody in the eyesight of men, or boys, let's say that. I had a taste of what it had felt like. And in doing so, I felt like if the people, it was just like David, when it came down to David and Saul. And I felt like if I didn't have somebody hyping me up or saying, okay, this is this or this is that, I was still nothing. So in the eyesight of man, I felt like if man didn't say it, then it wasn't it. So if a man didn't say, okay, you beautiful, or girl, you got it, or this or that, then I felt like, okay, I must not really have it. So it took me looking and desiring me to hear it from men or boys in order to know my worth and who I was. So this is what built me and cultivated me and made me at that period of time who I was at that time. So I didn't understand it. A lot of the stuff that I went through in my life, it was a lack of understanding. Because again, if I would have knew who I was and who I was to God and who I was to, and this goes to not having the proper guidance from a male figure.
Wow.
What I desired and what I needed, I didn't get.
Wow.
So I don't come from, I don't come from a family of where it's like that constant validation of, okay, you're beautiful, you're doing this or you're doing that. It's something that comes sporadically, and when it happens, it's like, okay, thank you, it's fine, whatever it is. So since I didn't get that from my father, I looked at it from other men.
Wow.
So if a man said it, then that's what it was, and if they didn't say it, then I wasn't nothing.
Wow.
And that's how I built my life at that time.
Wow. Wow. Crave. Wow. I think about a mirror, because sometimes a mirror reflects the image of the person that stands before it, and sometimes that mirror reflects an image, and if that mirror is shattered, so is that person's image. But I thank God that in you writing this book, that even though it appears that your image was shattered, that God was still trusting other people with broken pieces. That God was the one that can bring it back together. Sometimes in the midst of our hurt is when we find out who the healer is. And in the midst of your hurt, God came into your life as the healer, so you are now healed from the broken places of your life. One thing about God allowed you to be broken so that he can come in. Woo! Woo! Because there are cracks and crevices. So because you were broken, it gave him the opportunity to come on in because you were broken. And then he comes back to say, he's close to the brokenhearted. He heals the brokenhearted. And you went from being a person who struggled about your past, P-A-S-T. You went from past to now O-R being added to, pastor. You went from your past now to becoming a pastor, and God changed the story. He changed the outcome. He changed what the enemy had tried to pencil. When the Bible said that God is not the author of confusion, God stopped the author because he put confusion in your life, and he said, this is what not how, what this, watch it, because God is just like a director. But you know how a director is of a film? That a film already writes the script. Watch this, please hear me. And I want you to hear this tonight because she's given her life testimony in this book. I want you to hear this. As a director, if something don't go right, they say cut. Woo! 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 What the enemy tried in her life, God would always say, because he's a director, I did not pencil this in. This is not part of a script. Cut. Watch. And some people never got to see the errors and the mistakes that was made because God did not, watch this, he did not put this in any type of addition. He cut it out of it. He cut it out of the story. So you'll look at her life and think that nothing has never went wrong. Why? Because God said cut. And listen to me what I'm telling you today, that it doesn't matter what took place in your past. Because God is the author and finisher of your life. And tonight he's saying, cut. I'm cutting this part out of your life. I'm cutting the failures. I'm cutting the depression. I'm cutting the sorrow. I'm cutting the devil out of your life. God is yelling, cut. This will not be seen in this edition. You're getting ready to step into a new edition. Yeah, new edition. Now, I'm going to read the back of this book again because it's so prevalent. The back of this book it has truly blessed me. It said, within these pages lies a light that has long remained concealed. A light that has been concealed, waiting for its moment to be released. Woo. As Jesus would say in the beginning, let there be light, and darkness comprehended it not. Light was waiting to be concealed. It was concealed, but it was waiting to be revealed. Shrouded by falsehood and tumultuousness, circumstances steaming from an unknown destiny. In my quest to discover myself, I embarked on a journey, unaware that the missing are sought with alerts. If a celestial alert has been issued for my soul, let this testimony illuminate not God's unwavering love, but also his constant presence in your life. Without his guidance, my life's narrative would cease to exist. Triumph serves as a beacon of hope, a testimony to God's boundless affection. Amidst the clutches of adversity, remembering that his presence, persevered, an unwavering companion as you traverse this narrative, discard the weight of your past. For Satan may deploy individuals to dread up former regrets. Instead, fix your gaze on the path God has carved for you, the distance you've journeyed with your faith as a driving force. Triumph is imminent. Embrace the tenacity within you. For faith without action is incomplete. Now, I want you to, it's so much in this, but I want you to explain to people why they must continue on and not get stuck in their past, because I see what God has done in your life through these pages. These pages. This book is a great accomplishment. This book shows the sign of your maturity. When you can release your life on the pages, it tells me that you have more life ahead. This book is a sign that I release my past so that I can obtain and grasp my future. Can you help people that are watching tonight that need to release their past so they can go from tragedy to triumph?
One thing I would say to, I'm going to look at this camera. One thing that I'll say to all of the listening viewers on tonight is this. One reason why you don't want to stop and you don't want to give up, because at the end of the day, you want to see the expected end. One thing that I found in my life was the fact that at the end of the day, if I wasn't doing it for myself, I had to be doing it for someone greater. Like presently, I'm a mom, but before I was a mom, even as a young child, I had to know that it was for another reason, even if it wasn't for myself. Because at certain points in time, I'll be like, I'm not worthy, God. I don't look like what, the world desires for me to look like. Or I don't look like what I see in the body of Christ. I don't look like these things. I'm only me. I always knew I was a little different anyways. But it's like with the uniqueness that God had given me, I didn't know how to handle it. So I had a lot of questions. And in questions, it made me curious. So I started trying to find different stuff to give me an identity, not understanding that God had given me identity all along. I remember one time, Pastor, you had a book signing. And in the book signing, you signed my book, and I think it was for the garden. And you told me in the book, you said, continue to be the extension of heaven. And in that moment, that spoke so heavily to me, because being a purpose, person, that feels like you don't have a purpose or identity, that'll make you just feel like you're just existing and you're not living. And again, not understanding that my greatest fight wasn't the enemy, my greatest fight wasn't, the different things that come in the world. My greatest fight was getting over me. And once I got over me, I was able to say, okay, God, now I can see you. I can see the image and the likeness of you, because I took me out of the way. When you find that the enemy can't do anything to you, because a lot of the situations, and it goes even beyond what God had given me for this book. This is not my whole life. There's much more to come. But God literally got me to a place where he's like, okay, this is how God gave me, he literally gave me instructions. He gave me instructions to write the book. But it got to the point where he was like, okay, this is necessary. This is how I need to write it, make it a memoir.
Wow.
Because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, God, I need to, I'm about to write another Bible. Like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? God said, no, make it a memoir.
Wow.
I had to go look up what a memoir was, because I didn't know.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, God. So I'm like, okay, this how you want to do it. I had to know that it was necessary then. And again, the enemy will constantly make you feel as though your life has no purpose. And when you start to get those feelings, that's how you know that your life has purpose. So I had to understand that in all the darkness I was encountering, I like to tell people it's better for me to smile than to frown. Because of all that I had to encounter in life, I should always be mad. I should be mad every day of my life.
Wow.
But God said not so.
Wow.
Because just how I'm wearing this bright yellow dress, this is the light that God has created for me to be even in the midst of darkness.
Wow.
And sometimes when you're in darkness, it seems like you're by yourself. It seems like it's no one present with you, not even your creator. But God shows you I'm still there with you because I still made you to be that light. He literally put you in Jesus' stead. You become that lamp. You become that light into the path of other people. Being first, sometimes it doesn't feel like you're first. Physically, I'm not the first child. I'm the second child. On both sides with my mother and with my father. But in that, God still made me first. He said, okay, the last shall be first. Because you have a way to pave. You have stuff that you still have to do. My life is not in here. This is not going to be the greatest thing that God is going to give me the power to do. It won't be. This is only the beginning. And to me, that's why this was so, it was so prevalent for the time. That's why this was so important. So when this accomplishment came, I said, okay, God, I see you working. It took a while, but I see you working. Because God had to make sure I was completely done with me. Me was out of the way. So now when the enemy tries to come with old stuff, I don't succumb to that old stuff no more because I know that God has allowed me to overcome it. That testimony is past. Now it's time for me to take on and embark on the new that God has set before me. So for everybody that reads this, I purposely said that I desire that this is going to piss the devil off.
Oh,
I
yeah.
want my soul, that's my sole purpose. It's to piss the devil off with this. Because in every situation that happened, it was supposed to end me. Every situation that took place and occurred that I wrote about this book, it was meant to end me. Every situation. I was never meant to come out of anything. But God said, no, you have to come out so that you can bring other people out. They can't stay in Egypt. They can't stay in bondage. They have to come out of it. Because I know God has given me the ability to know how the devil truly works. Every tactic that he's coming at your mind with is only a tactic. Because if you believe it, then he can take your future. But if you don't believe it, then you can take your future back. That's what it's about. So try to smile in the dark places. Because if you smile and you make an enemy mad. And that's what you're supposed to do. But it's only for God to bring you out of where you are to bring other people out. I had to make sure that my back was equipped to take on everybody that God has placed upon it. Every generation, every seed, every person that's to come after God is finished with me and on to the next one. I don't want to be a Joshua. Everybody that comes behind me has to know that God exists. How do they know that God exists? It's through my life. So if the enemy try to come at you with suicide, it's only because he wants you to end it so that somebody else don't see that there's life still extended.
Wow.
Allow God to be God. Let go of your past. It's your past for a reason. You have to move past it. It's not going to take you down. You cannot allow it to take you down. Everything that you encounter is a spiritual thing. It's not a natural thing. If you constantly start to see the same thing, catch it. Catch it before it gets too far. Catch every small fox that try to come and destroy the vine. Because you still have to be that extension. And that's my prayer for all that reason, for all that encounters this book.
Wow. My question to you is, where can they find this book?
As of right now, everybody who desires to purchase the book, you can find it on Barnes & Noble and also Amazon.
Wow. Listen, we thank you for tuning in tonight with Chandrea Malone. His love brought me out from tragedy to triumph. Listen, we thank you for tuning in tonight. Go and get your copy. Please go and get your copy and watch the testimonies and watch your life be transformed and watch your life change from reading this book.